This is Dead Serious, a show about short horror stories worthy of discussion. I'm Dead Palette, and it's Halloween month, Beyonce. Today we're taking a look at another 15 Hours Creepy Story from the 15 Hours Creepy Story Tumblr page. Check it out below. It's got, I won't vouch for the quality of all of them, but in quality, they're all really interesting, so you definitely want to check those out. This one is entitled Lockdown. Its length is short. Let's get right into it. This is fucking weird, and I'll state that now. So, I'm a high school student. I'm 15, and I finish 9th grade tomorrow, actually. June 2nd of 2017. And my high school went on lockdown earlier, and I was so out of it that I didn't feel like writing about it. Most students have been in a lockdown situation at school before, or at least drills, where the principal states earlier in the week that during the week there will be a random lockdown drill and such. Or if the principal doesn't state it, your homeroom teacher will. All right, pretty interesting premise so far. We're going to be dealing with some sort of lockdown, and it's something that's very much so come into vogue. I work in schools and everything. Lockdown drills are very important. We do them now because of all of the gun scares and everything along those lines. And I've been in a real-life lockdown myself. I don't know how common they are, but when I was in that lockdown, it was funny. Someone had to piss really bad, so they had to pee in a trash can, and everyone's in the corner just kind of laughing at this guy for pissing into the trash can. And it was all over someone bringing a plastic gun to school and threatening to do a shooting. That was really bizarre. Anyway, let's get back into the story. I had a bunch of them when I was in elementary school. Mostly in 3rd grade when I was 9. Nothing crazy. Our teacher would be all, there's some drills and stuff today, don't be concerned. I had one in 5th grade where we actually had a threat to our school, apparently. I don't remember much of it. But nothing since then. Never had reason to. I personally, when I was in school, never had to do lockdown drills until I got to high school, and maybe that's a product of me being older than our narrator, but I do wonder how often schools engage in these kinds of things. I know around where I live, it's an area where you could see parents panicking about that kind of thing. Anyway. And today, of all fucking days, our math teacher just kinda panics. Not badly. Most of the kids didn't notice it, but I and my friend did. He just kind of trailed off his sentence mid-lecture about who knows or cares what, and just kind of stared at the door. He didn't say anything, and move for a few minutes before the principal's voice echoed through the speakers. This is an emergency. All teachers lock their doors from the inside. Students lock the windows and wait for further instructions. So we did as we were told. We only had 3 windows, and I had been in enough lockdown drills to be able to tell everyone what was happening and that it was probably a drill. That's definitely realistic because every time I've been in a lockdown drill, the adults are the ones that are freaking out, and the kids are just kind of convinced that it's nothing important, and all the kinds of scenarios, you know. Until half an hour had passed, the principal hadn't come back on the speakers. Nobody really said anything. Our teacher was pacing in the back of the room, out of range of the tiny window in the door, and we all sat out of view of it, and we all sat out of view of it. Some of us messing on our phones. I think some of us were sleeping. Teenager stuff. Okay, so this isn't like any lockdown drill I've been in before, or lockdown that I've been in before, because it's always been you need to stay quiet and give the appearance that no one is in there, and you're not allowed to be on your phone, which I think is kind of weird. I think you should be allowed to be on your phone to like text loved ones and everything. But anyway. And then somebody was knocking on the door, not loudly, just a polite little knock like a student that had a question for the teacher. Our teacher once again started to panic and just backed into the corner with all of us, and almost inaudibly told us to all to stay absolutely silent. Most of us agreed. Of course, there was one kid who quietly was just confused about the whole thing. Alright, so this is more the tone of what I would expect from a lockdown drill, is everyone being quiet and everyone, and the adults being tense and everything. 15 or so minutes passed, and the knocking was still going. Not constant. It happened off and on for those 15 minutes, but it was still happening, and it was getting louder, harder, faster, stronger. Our principal finally went back to the speakers and said that it was okay for all the teachers to unlock their doors. That there was a threat by some woman who was saying she was going to attack one of the students or something like that. However, our teacher just kept staring at the door as the knocking kept going. Ooh, okay, I like this. I like that there's still tension even after the lockdown drill is over. That's a pretty interesting premise. Everything from then on until about half an hour ago is just blank. I remember our teacher panicking about the knocking at the door still, and the next thing I know, it's around 4 p.m., and I'm sitting at home, talking to people on Skype. And minorly raging that my Overwatch isn't loading for some reason. That my Overwatch isn't loading for some reason? Your Overwatch. My Overwatch. No, it's our Overwatch. But that's aside the point. Little bit of weird grammar happening all of a sudden. So, why half an hour ago, you're probably wondering. My friend called me and said if I were up to anything, that the school called her parents a few minutes before asking if any kids knew the woman who had called in the threat today. Remind you, she was also at school with me in a different classroom, but I know she was there. Remind you, it should say mind you, right? I've never heard it. It should be remember or mind you. She said her parents asked her. She told them she had no idea, the usual, then called me to ask about it before my parents did. I told her I didn't know the name, but I asked if her teacher acted the same way about the lockdown. Very concerningly, she just kind of asked me what I was talking about, that we didn't have any lockdown today. I told her we did. I was in math class, 5th period, lasted for like 2 hours, and she still didn't know what I was talking about. Then I remembered. Kind of. It's still blurry. The knocking had stopped. The lights in the building went off for some reason. The power was still on, but the lights weren't. Then I remember one of the students was crying in the classroom, and our teacher had told us all to be silent again as he unlocked the door and walked out, immediately closing the door behind him. so nobody could see in the room. The lights were still off, and there we were. The chances anybody would have seen us anyway were slim to none. Ooh, the tension's ramping up. I'm not sure what's going on, though, or whether it's going to be believable or possible or what have you, but let's see where this goes. Nothing happened for a few minutes. He came back in, the lights came back on, and the lecture started back up like nothing happened. He didn't even ask why we were all huddled up in the corner of the room like we had seen a ghost. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But that's not what bothers me. What bothers me is that my friend and the school, everyone knows that woman called in a threat today. But nobody remembers the lockdown. Credits to Evers Spire? Huh. Don't know how to feel about that. I ultimately don't think that means anything. I was really hoping for something that would actually have to do with the real-life horrors of a lockdown drill and the fear that our culture lives in around lockdowns and everything. I was hoping that there would be some sort of like supernatural element of here's a ghost that's a victim of a school shooting or something along those lines. I don't know. It just seemed very anticlimactic that this person apparently just was completely in a different world. I don't know, because he's saying, I'm not sure it's a guy. The narrator is saying that they experienced the lockdown drill and that everyone was huddled in the corner, but no one remembers the lockdown. That's so bizarre and nonsensical. I gotta say, I'm not a fan of it, really. I think it's trying to parade around as though it's more meaningful than it actually is. And I kind of had high expectations for a story entitled Lockdown that's supposed to be a creepy story, you know? I'm curious what other people could come up with in terms of a story based around a lockdown that might have to do with real life horror, or something supernatural that's kind of grounded, or something where it's just slightly disconcerting instead of such a ridiculous premise as, no, they just don't remember the lockdown drill, even though they all were huddled in the corner. I don't really care for that myself. Now, if you enjoyed that, please consider helping out the community and supporting my channel. You can support the community by conversing in the comments below, going to toospooky.com for original horror stories, and trying your hand at short horror yourself. You can support me by liking this video, following me on Twitter and Tumblr, links in the description, and checking out my art page, which is also down below. Thank you so much for your time, and now on to our sponsor at this non-moment in time, which is bottle caps. Bottle caps. They're kind of like antacids, but with a little bit of sugar on them.